Welcome to Know This Live. I'm Zinhle Essamuah. Joining me today is Symone Sanders. She is the chief spokesperson and senior advisor to Vice President Kamala Harris. Aside from being a top aide to the first woman vice president, she's also a part of the first White House communication team that is led by all women. Symone, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me today, Zinhle. Just a nice little barrier-breaking intro
For
you
sure,
teed
and
up
it's
there.
and it's definitely been a barrier-breaking few months for you and the administration. I know your team has been in office for a month now. Give us the real talk. How is Vice President Harris's office and time as vice president different? What is she trying to do differently?
So, Zinhle, it has only been 4 weeks, a month, since Joe Biden and Vice President Harris were sworn in. And I have to say, real progress has been made. When the president and vice president were sworn in, when they took office, there weren't enough vaccinators out there. There were not enough vaccines in communities. There were not enough places for folks to get vaccines. Record unemployment. Many more schools were closed then than were closed right now. And in 4 weeks, we have made real progress. And the president and vice president have really taken to attacking and addressing these converging crises that the American people are dealing with: a public health crisis, an economic crisis, a crisis of racial injustice, and a climate crisis. So the president and vice president have been very busy. I think there is still a lot of work to do, and the vice president will be the first to tell you that. But if she were sitting here right now today, she'd tell you the American people should know help is on the way. Addressing these crises is at the forefront of the work that the administration is doing, and we are off to a really great start.
And I'm glad you mentioned vaccinations and education. I know the White House just made a very big announcement, and that is that vaccinations for teachers will not be required to reopen schools. We know that this has been a big point of contention, specifically in local governments and between teachers' unions. So what do you say to teachers who are concerned about returning without a vaccination?
Well, I will tell you this, Sinclair, that the president and vice president believe that teachers should be prioritized for vaccinations. The first lady, Dr. Biden, is a teacher. The president knows firsthand the importance of teachers. And I think the vice president would be the first to tell you that teachers have had a profound impact on her life. And for teachers, she knows that it's just not what they do. For many of them, it's who they are. So I know right now in nearly half of the states and territories across the country, teachers are being prioritized for vaccinations. That is a decision that states do have to make. And the president and vice president have made it very clear where they stand, and that they believe that teachers should be prioritized. Look, I think we all want our kids back in school. Parents want to get kids back in school. Parents want to get back to work. Teachers want to get back in the classroom. And from the administration's perspective, the best way we can do that is to ensure that, one, the guidelines are out there so that the science is out there, and the CDC has done their part there. But two, I think we have to give schools the resources to get this done, which is why the passing of the American Rescue Plan is so critically important. In the American Rescue Plan, there's money for schools. There's also an additional $20 billion for vaccinations. The last thing I'll say is this: the vice president has been convening a lot of different groups around pushing the message of the American Rescue Plan and to hear feedback. She's spoken with mayors, small business owners, members of the Black Chamber. And in her last conversation with Jeff Zients, the White House COVID coordinator, and mayors from the African American Mayors Association, what she heard was that mayors said that the folks in their municipalities across the country, they want the vaccine. They want to know where they can get it,
Right.
how they can access and find it. And so, from the administration's perspective, what we need to do is ensure that we are, again, getting more vaccinators out there, getting more vaccines to states, which is why this week the vaccination doses that are going to states and territories has now increased to 13.5 million. And for reference, that's about 50% more than 4 weeks ago when they first took office. So again, progress is being made, but there's still a lot of work to do.
Yeah, and I know that about 28 states have prioritized teachers to get vaccinations, but that still leaves about half of the states in this country not prioritizing teachers. Would the Biden administration put forth a mandate requiring that teachers are prioritized for vaccines?
Well, I think the real question is that something, is that how the process works? And the answer is no. So the president and vice president have been very clear with governors and mayors, and the White administration staff have been very clear about what the position of the president and vice president is, and that is that they believe that teachers should be prioritized for vaccinations, and the federal government is doing its part to ensure there are vaccines in states and municipalities across the country in various ways. We have just increased doses to the pharmacy program, 2 million additional doses this week. The administration is now giving additional doses of vaccines to community health centers. And we know that for people all across the country, community health centers serve what, 30 million people a year? Those are places and spaces where folks across the country can go to access the vaccine, because we know that it's just not having the vaccine there. We have to make sure people get it in their arms. They have to have access. The administration has prioritized and partnered with states to what are called mass vaccination centers. These are federally funded mass vaccination sites that have been stood up in Oakland and LA and Arlington, Texas, Dallas, Houston, Brooklyn, and Queens and New York. We're looking to do more of those across the country. So again, I wish we had a magic wand and we could say everyone is vaccinated right here, right now, but we don't. But the administration is working diligently to do its part. And by the end of July, I'll tell you, we will have enough vaccines so that every person in America who would like to get a vaccine will be able to access one.
And you've alluded to it, but I'd love to know, what is the bottom line? We've seen sort of a moving target when it comes to goals with reopening schools. So what would success look like for the Biden administration around that and around vaccinations?
Well, the president and vice president, they want our kids back in schools. They want teachers in the classroom. And we know the damage that is being done when as the longer children are out of school. I mean, you talk about the mental health toll that is being taken. So the president said in a town hall with CNN earlier this week that it is his belief and our goal that by the end of his first 100 days, which is about April 30th for folks who are tracking, that a majority of K through 8 schools will be open. And he also said in that same town hall that it's his belief and his goal, and we are working very diligently to ensure that this gets done, is that by the September, when schools will be reopening, if you will, for the next school year, that the majority of schools will in fact be open. How do we do that? We have to ensure schools have the resources they need to get this done, which is why it is important and imperative that we pass the American Rescue Plan. But we also have to do our part individually. That means masking, that means social distancing, and that means when the vaccine is eligible to you in your communities across the country, folks, you have to go out there, do your part, and take the vaccine. It's relatively painless, it's safe, but most importantly, it will save lives.
And you referenced the American Rescue Plan a few times. I just want to briefly touch on that. What conversations are you having behind the scenes with your Republican lawmakers who might be hesitant to move forward with it?
The American Rescue Plan is a top priority for the White House, top priority for the president and vice president, because it is the relief that American people need right now. Look, 10 million folks are unemployed in this country. There are 12 million children who don't have enough food to eat. 15 million people today, as we speak, are behind on their rental payments. So for the president and vice president, this package was designed not with a number, but with the need in mind. And I think if you look to Republican governors and Republican mayors and Democratic mayors and governors across the country, they believe that this is a package that needs to be passed. They said so from the White House just last week when they were here. So the president and vice president are working diligently with lawmakers across the political spectrum, if you will. But they believe that this is not a partisan endeavor. This is about the American people, and that is why we have to urgently pass this package.
And Symone, I know you've talked about the mass impact of the coronavirus. We know that women have disproportionately been impacted. About 3 million are expected to have left the workforce, lost jobs, or just need to take on additional caretaking responsibilities. So given all of that and the height of what is really a disparate issue, what is the administration doing to make sure that this disparity doesn't remain?
I mean, the numbers are just staggering. Between November and December of last year, 82,000 Black women lost their jobs. 82,000 Black women. Prior to the pandemic, Black women were the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs. You said it, almost nearly 3 million women have left the workforce. of I mean, we talk about minimum wage workers. Of minimum wage workers, 60% of minimum wage workers are women. This is a national emergency. And from the administration's perspective, and the vice president wrote an op-ed about this very thing in the Washington Post last weekend. From her perspective, this requires a national solution, a bold solution, and that is exactly what the administration is offering. The American Rescue Plan speaks directly to the heart of many of these issues. And again, this is about relief. This is about getting direct checks to folks. This is about getting relief to communities. This is about the child care that folks so desperately need, paid family leave. The list goes on. And all of these things are encompassed in the American Rescue Plan, which is, again, why it's the top priority for the administration. And the vice president has been out there sounding the drum on this. On Thursday of this week, she will be meeting with lawmakers, Democratic lawmakers, and members of organizational groups from across the spectrum, from the National Council of Negro Women to women who are labor leaders, to talk specifically about the American Rescue Plan, the urgency needed to pass it, and what these groups are doing to rally their bases to get them behind this bill.
Yeah, and I'd be remiss not to focus on Black women, which you highlighted. I know that Black women graduates tend to graduate with some of the most highest rates of student debt that we see. And the Biden administration has referenced considering student loan forgiveness, specifically $10,000. I know some House Democrats and Democrats generally are saying, no, we need $50,000. What might compromise look like in this space? And would the Biden administration consider an executive order on this front?
So the president has been really clear on what his current where he stands here on student loan forgiveness as it relates to that 10,000, and that is what he believes can happen via an executive order. Now we know some of our friends on the Hill are saying that $50,000 in student loan forgiveness can also be done via an executive order. And what the president has done today is he is instructing his team to look into the legality and what is really possible as it relates to any executive action, and we'll be working to put that together. But the reality is this. President Biden has spoken about this often, as has Vice President Harris. The burden that student loan debt puts on families, on young people who are entering the workforce, folks who are struggling to be able to just buy their first home, is enormous. And there are a number of things that the president and vice president, while on the campaign trail together, have proposed. A $15,000 tax credit, if you will, for first-time home buyers, which I am still a renter, and so that first-time home buyer would definitely speak to me. There's some real tangible and practical things we can do. And in the coming weeks, the administration is going to put forth a number of these plans that the president had previously laid out. But I will just tell you this: we cannot get to recovery. We cannot get to talking about a jobs plan, an economic package, so on and so forth, our Build Back Better agenda, until we deal with the relief that Americans so urgently need, which is the American Rescue Plan. Folks are standing in food lines right now. Americans need this. This is a survival plan, as the vice president often says, and we are committed to getting it done for the American people.
And before we move on, I just want to be crystal clear as well. So have you sat in on any of those conversations around a potential executive action when it comes to student loan forgiveness or that $10,000 forgiveness?
So this $10,000 forgiveness plan is a plan that the president put out on the campaign trail. He reiterated it during the transition, and it was reiterated within the first week of his administration. And so the president believes it is in his purview to cancel up to $10,000 of student loan debt. I know allies on the Hill believe that he can and should do more via executive action, and currently our team is looking into that. But to be clear, he understands the enormous amount of just the weight and pressure that student loan debt puts on families, on young people, and on some not so young people, frankly, who are currently out there in the workforce. And so the administration has a bevy of plans that we believe will speak directly to the heart of those issues. But again, first, we are focused on the American Rescue Plan.
And Vice President Harris has said that her focus in her role is to make President Biden as successful as possible. And so what does success look like practically for the Biden-Harris administration?
This is such an important question, and I think it looks like a couple things. Obviously, the president and vice president have laid out the enormous challenge of confronting a number of converging crises before the American people. Again, those four crises I talked about: an economic crisis, a public health crisis, a crisis of racial injustice, and a climate crisis. I think if we sat here for a while, we could name a few other crises. And right now, success looks like passing the American Rescue Plan, but it also really looks like giving people a roadmap forward. Yesterday, or earlier in the week in the town hall that the president did, he was asked, when will we get back to normal? Just earlier today in the White House press briefing, as I was watching before I came up here, Jen Psaki, the White House press secretary, was asked, when will we get back to normal? And truly, a successful Biden-Harris administration is one that delivers for the American people as it relates to COVID relief, as it relates to economic recovery, as we're talking about healthcare. Just last week, the president reopened the healthcare.gov exchange to extend healthcare to millions of Americans who have been without it in the midst of a pandemic. That's not who we are in the United States of America. And so I wish I could give you one quick, easy answer, but the reality is there's a lot to do. But progress has definitely been made. And I think we would argue that this first month here has absolutely been a success.
Well, Symone, thank you so much for making the time with us during this first month of yours.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
And thanks to everyone for watching and joining us. I'm Zinhle Essamuah.